Well, this is my last video of the year, and as promised in my previous video, in this video I'll be showing you how to check internet access with JavaScript. So in my previous video I showed you that the navigator object has an online property which allows you to check if a user has a network connection or not. So this is true because I have a network connection, and currently this is a hotspot connection to a mobile phone, and if that connection is not there, the online property has false. But this online property does not actually tell you if the user has internet access, because it's possible they have network connection without internet access. For example, here if I go to google.com, you can see I have internet access, but if I go on this phone now and I turn off the mobile data, so no internet access but the hotspot is still connected, and I can show you this as proof. If I go to google.com, it's going to take some time because the browser is trying to reach google.com. Yep, you can see this site can't be reached, so we don't have internet access. But if I still come here and I do navigator.online, you can see this is still true because there is a network connection. So how can you check internet access? There are a couple of ways you can probably achieve this. I'm going to show you one way in this video. So here I have a function called check network connection. This just returns navigator.online true or false if there's a network connection. But then here I have a function called check internet access, and I take two parameters, retries and delay. I'll show you what I need them for later on. First, here I'm going to check, is there a network connection? If there is no network connection, I return false, because if there's no network connection, there won't be internet access. I have a variable here, attempt, with 1 as a start value. Then I have internet access as a start value of false. Now here I have a while loop where I check if the attempt is less than or equal to the retries, then keep running this code here. So basically what I want to do is I want to attempt to reach the internet a couple of times before I give up and say there is no internet access. I have a try block, and then I have a fetch call where I make a fetch request to this public API. This public API is JSON placeholder, and here I'm just going to make an API to this part just for this. I'm not really interested in this data. I'm just making this request to know if there is an internet access. Now you can have a different URL here. It might even be the URL of your server. Just make sure it's something that is publicly available that you won't have cause issue with. So here I check if the response is okay, then the internet access, I can update that variable to true and I can break out of this loop. But if it is not okay, then I'm going to throw a new error. I'm throwing this error here so that I can catch it, because it's possible that response.ok is false but an error is not thrown, so the catch block doesn't run. I actually have a separate video where I talked about fetch API not triggering the catch block even when your request fails. I'll link it below so you can learn more about why I am doing this. Then here in my catch block, I'm going to first have attempts this field, either attempt 1 or attempt 2. Then I'm going to retry in a particular number of seconds, which is the delay I have at the top here. Then I'm going to increase the attempt by 1. This line here, I'm just going to wait for some seconds. This just allows me to wait for a particular time before trying again. That's what this line is doing here. Then if the internet access is true, I return it. If after the while loop the internet access remains false, I return it as false. This function hide offline banner just hides a offline banner, and this shows the offline banner. I'll show you what that looks like soon. And with that, I can come to this section here where we have toggle offline banner. First, we check if there's an internet access. This should be retried maximum 3 times with 2 seconds delay. If the user is online, log internet is accessible, else no internet access. Then here I can check if the user is online, hide the offline banner, else show the offline banner. So let's go back here now. Remember, the user does not have internet access. Now if I should refresh this, you can see that we have attempt 1 failed because there is no internet access. We tried in 2 seconds, attempt 2 failed, tried in 2 seconds, attempt 3 failed, and now we can conclude that there is no internet access. So even though we have a network connection, we're verified now that we don't have an internet access because we couldn't make a successful API request to this URL. Now in this case, I had to refresh. Before we had attempt 1 failed, attempt 2 failed, and this page is loading because it's running locally. But in your case, you probably don't want the user to refresh before they find out they don't have a user connection or a bad internet. So here I can just have an interval that runs every 10 seconds, and every 10 seconds I check if I should show the offline banner or not. I save the ID returned from this set interval to this variable, interval ID for regular check, so that if I conclude that the user is offline, I don't have to run that regular check anymore. I can clear that interval so it stops running. And then when I clear that interval, this button shows. So when the user clicks retry connection, here on this button, I would hide the offline banner and then have another interval that runs every 10 seconds to check again if there is internet access or not. So I'm just going to come here to comment this one. So we have this 10 seconds check. So now if I refresh after 10 seconds, let's say the user is currently on the application, and now we have attempt 1 failed, attempt 2 failed, attempt 3 failed, and now we see that the user is actually offline. And here for this button, if we click on retry again, after 10 seconds, we're going to have something similar. So after 10 seconds, we have attempt 1 failed, attempt 2 failed, attempt 3 failed, and we see again that the user is offline. So depending on the kind of application you're building, you might want to have these regular checks for internet access, or you might even trigger a logic like this when the user tries to maybe click a button, submit a request, and then on that request, you can show them that they actually don't have internet access. You can use this in various ways, but I hope in this video you get to understand the difference between navigator.online and doing an actual internet access check. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and see you next year.